The topic of my speech today is starting before you're ready, of which this speech is an example. Motivation is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing things, not about being motivated to do things. I don't know, some chuckles, some of you can read that. It says, if a pretty poster and a cute saying are all it takes to motivate you, you probably have a very easy job. The kind robots will be doing soon. So I was trying to think and crystallize what I wanted to talk about today. And I find that, one phrase that really locks in your speech. And I thought, getting things done. No one's ever written a book called Getting Things Done. That would be a great phrase. And then I realized somebody had written a book called Getting Things Done. So I thought, what about getting to yes? That would be no, somebody wrote a book called that too. What about yes we can? That's new, that's fresh. But then I had one of those beautiful bolts of inspiration that strike, that original thought that crystallizes everything that you're thinking about and gives you that one phrase that's yours and yours alone. Isn't it? It's good, isn't it? And it's all mine. Or not. But it's such an iconic phrase, just do it, right? We see it everywhere, and if you go on the web, you can find all kinds of amusing images of just do it. The one I didn't use was of a pregnant woman wearing running shoes, and she's in the stirrups, and the doctor's there about to catch the baby, and it had just do it in the corner, and I thought that was maybe a little too far, even for TED. But it's about going out there and doing whatever it is you have to do to achieve whatever you want. Now that's kind of alarming looking. That's George Rooney. He's a soccer player in England. He's painted so that he's supposed to resemble the St. George's Cross, which is the English flag, as opposed to the Union Jack, which is the British flag. So that's what he's supposed to look like, not necessarily like he's just pulled his head and arms from the carcass of his enemies. But it's about doing something. It's about starting before you're ready. And I want to talk a little bit about, just do it, right? And I think a valid question is, why? Why just do it? Why not prepare a little more for it? And I think one answer has to do with this guy. Sir Isaac Newton, not a dumb person, pretty good with numbers, and he had a few good thoughts, and some of them were numbered for us into laws. Now, Newton's first law says, roughly, if you don't do anything, you stay where you are, right? And Newton's third law, if we paraphrase it a little bit, the law of entropy, right? It says basically everything's going to hell in a handbasket. So if we don't do anything, we stay where we are, which is going to hell in a handbasket. So that, to me, might be a reason that we might want to do something, okay? And there are good things that can happen, happy outcomes that can happen from this. And I'm going to talk about two particular examples from my life. I'm going to talk about the opening of the Des Moines Social Club at 1408 Locust Street, which is a classic example of us starting to do something before we were ready in any way, shape, or form. And if we hadn't, we probably never would have opened it. For those of you that don't know, the Des Moines Social Club is a multidisciplinary arts venue whose mission is to bring together the diverse communities of Des Moines using the arts. And we had our first facility was at 1408 Locust Street in this building here, this wonderful building that we're no longer in. We're now at the Kirkwood on 4th and Walnut. Please come and visit us there. It's a wonderful property in its own right. So this is going to be one example. Another example I'm going to use is probably the most terrifying thing that I have ever done in my entire life. And that was to get involved in having a family and raising kids, which, by the way, I wasn't prepared for and never would have been, probably. So let's start with the first example. A little context. This is a shout out to Big Wags here, who introduced me to the framework that we're going to look at some of the reasons why you might or might not actually have engaged in some things. Basically, we're going to look at 4 lenses of looking at the world, looking at work. As I say, Mike invented this for me. He pointed out to me these ideas have been around for hundreds of years under different names of the humors or the melancholia or whatever. But we're going to talk about 4 different work styles. We all have all 4 of these, but we have different preferences that are stronger or weaker in each of our particular styles. So there are relationship specialists, we'll call them blues for the sake of reference. Achievement specialists, this is what we're talking about, the get or done types, we'll call that gold. Process specialists, we'll call those green. and social specialists, and we'll call that orange. And we'll just kick through these real quick to give us a quick idea. Blues are feelers. They like one-to-one interaction. They're people pleasers. They're conflict avoiders. They're relationship specialists. They're good at reminding you that there are other human beings in the world and that their preferences might be taken into consideration on occasion, which is useful if, well, the first time I was introduced to this material, I self-identified as a green. Thinkers and analyzers. Yep, I love to do that. Highly competent. Of course, that was me. Work alone. I like to work with people, but sometimes I like to go off and do my little thing. And that was the one where I went, yeah, that's me. And that's the one also where when my wife was exposed to this material for the first time, she went, yeah, that's you. So as a process specialist. Now, that correct to a fault, let's just put a stake in that for a second, because if you always have to be right, not only correct to a fault, but not just I want to be right, but I really don't want to be in a situation where I don't know that I'm right, how often are you going to try something new? How often are you going to create something that's never been seen before? How often are you going to go someplace you've never been before? So that correct to a fault, although it can be useful in terms of saying, hey, you know what, your taxes don't add up, it also can stop you from doing new things. Now, the first time I heard this material, I thought this particular color referred to my business partner, Zach Mannheimer. Orange, fun and excitement, work in groups, work and play hard, absolutely. Competitive, yep. Social specialists. Now, what was interesting was the first time that Zach was exposed to this material, he identified himself as a gold. Get her done. Absolutely. Achievement-oriented. Click. Structure and order, well, maybe not so much for Zach, but rules and authority, again. Loyalty and duty, absolutely. And what I realized in thinking about it was that Zach, in order to achieve what we had achieved with the Des Moines Social Club, had to turn up this gold part of his personality in such a way that he was much more aware of it than he maybe had been before. And this is the part that we're talking about today. This gold part of our personality, no matter what your preference is or where you self-identify on that scale, this get her done part, this achievement orientation is what we're talking about today. So let's be very clear here. I'm not talking about a huge movement in social research. I am talking about my personal experience. We have a very small statistical sample here that we're discussing. Okay? Speaking of getting things done, one way to create security, don't worry about screwing up. Again, not easy for me over here as a green in that material that we just talked about, but an absolutely vital component when you're going to open a multidisciplinary arts facility and you walk into a building like the Des Moines Social Club. Again, currently we're at 4th and Walnut, but we're talking about the old building for a minute. The Des Moines Social Club, you walk into a building and it looks like this. Okay? This is not an arts facility yet. And neither is this. And that's not really much of a theater yet. But we had got control of the building in January of '09. We opened the facility March 6th of '09. So in that basically 8-week period, we pounded out an incredible number of staff hours. Staff at that time, I think being me, Zach. We pounded out an incredible number of volunteer hours. We've had incredible donations. We had a huge work call every single weekend in February, and also a couple of weekends in January. Volunteers replacing ceiling tiles, painting, plastering walls, doing all kinds of stuff. So that theater then looked like that. Right? This was setting up for our subjective circus later on. That particular theater, that crowded room, let's just kick back to, that room became that, which became that. That's Repertory Theater of Iowa's production of A Christmas Carol in that space. It became that, which was our annual Food for Thought fundraising dinner, because we started. Now, none of us were architects, none of us were contractors. In fact, there was an actual loss of value on real estate the moment Zach or I set foot in it, right? Your investment just went down because you had a couple of artists who really didn't know what they were doing. But we, with a huge amount of volunteer help, we got started collectively. I don't mean to imply that Zach and I did this because God knows we didn't. Collectively, the Des Moines Social Club achieved this, and it looked like that when they were done. And it was absolutely more extraordinary than anything Zach or I could have done ourselves. It became a center for fun, for people to come and do new things that they'd never done before, for people to see performances they'd never seen before, for people to take classes that they'd never had before. It became a place where people came to live their dreams. And that was what we wanted to do all along. There are certain things that you can only learn by doing. I really believe that. Some things you can learn, be trained in, and there's a lot of resources available to you. Hey, could we have done a better job of prepping for what we needed to do in that space? Sure, probably. Well, not probably. I'll tell you right now, heck yeah. But if we had waited 6 months to open the place, would the Des Moines Social Club exist at 4th and Walnut today? No, no way. Some things you have to learn by doing them, and I believe that this is one of those things. That's a picture of one of the best days of my life, because that is the day that Julie Betts married me and made me one of the happiest men you've ever seen. This is something that I really believe you only learn by doing it. And one of the greatest things about that day is that it led to this. That's our first child, Vaughn Rosaline Betts McIver. I'm pretty sure that's Cookie on her face, but I can't swear it's not Boogs. And she is amazing. And I talked to a lot of people about being a dad. And Julie, the Christmas before Vaughn was born, she was born, by the way, January 28th of 2009, which if you were keeping track of the previous story, was right around the time we took control of the building and were spending all those insane hours, and which is why my wife is a saint, because it was a lot going on at once, let's just say that. She gave me a book that Christmas before called Matthew McIver and Fatherhood, The Evidence Thus Far, in which she asked all of my friends and family what kind of father they thought I would make. Shockingly, most of it was positive, which actually kind of lowered my estimation of my friends' insight, but it led us to this wonderful joy of my life, and eventually to this one, which is Flynn Caroline Betts McIver, our second daughter, who is 9 weeks old today. Isn't she cute? Somebody tweeted this morning at a different conference that I think it was Sam Davidson said that if you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation, you should make sure to have a picture of a baby in there. So I went ahead and had two. But this is something I couldn't learn without doing it. I really firmly believe that. And those are the three most special people in my life, right there. So let's talk for a second. You can do amazing things if you just get started, right? Spetsnaz, when the only way to kill a terrorist is with a back-flipping hatchet attack. I mentioned Spetsnaz, which are the Russian special forces here. There's actually a link. There's a reason for this, honest to God. Not just because it's really cool. I take Russian martial art called Systema, which is taught in North America by a guy named Vladimir Vasilyev, who is, in fact, a former Russian special forces guy. And is a very spiritual guy, a very insightful guy, and the most amazing martial artist I've ever seen in my life. And that I've seen a couple. And he was talking about, somebody was talking to him about how important it was to have spirit, the right spirit, when you're doing all this stuff. And Vlad gave one of my favorite quotes ever. Spirit is great, but no arms, no legs. Who cares about your spirit? Right? You can have the best spirit in the world. If you're not doing anything with it, who cares? What's the counter argument to just do it? Let's look at the other side of the equation for a second. I think the counter argument to just do it is, of course, in Latin. Amant victoria curam, which is victory loves careful preparation. We should note for the Latin scholars in the room that according to the interwebs, curam can also mean pains or worry, which I think is a different but equally true statement. What we're saying here is that if you're going to succeed, you need careful preparation. And I'm not denying that that can be extremely useful, as we learned when we were doing 1408 Locust. And again, Seneca the Younger, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. This is true also. I think what we actually have here, again, we talked about the other side of the coin. I think we have two sides of the same coin. Because I think you don't just act or you don't just prepare, but you have to prepare and you have to act. And then when you've done that, you have to do a little more preparation, a little research, and wait, what went wrong? How do we do this? How do we fix this? How do we make this better? And that's where we end up with this. That's the kanji symbol in Japanese for a concept called kaizen, which basically means continual improvement. It can be a sort of an abstract idea like just continual improvement, or it can be a very specific industrial philosophy that Toyota and other companies use. And sometimes you look back and go, well, maybe Toyota should have used that a little more a couple years ago. But this is a key concept, I think, because this is where we start to see this action preparation cycle keep going. You start, you have to start. If you don't start, you're never going to go anywhere. But that doesn't mean that you start blindly. It doesn't mean that you don't, as you're starting, keep your eyes open and prep and come back better for the next cycle. I don't know what John Wooden has to do with Japanese rock gardens, but I really think that this key to me is what preparation is about, what Kaizen is about, what, if you ever read Jim Collins' Good to Great, and if you haven't, go buy it or get the audiobook. He's actually not a bad reader in it. The concept of the flywheel in Jim Collins, which is that you're trying to make this massive change. You don't make it all at once. You make it one step at a time, and you build that momentum. Again, Isaac Newton, that's one of the laws we didn't talk about, right? Isaac Newton, you have to build that momentum. You have to put in that effort. And it's action preparation in this ongoing cycle. That's how the makers make. That's how we're going to have this continued downtown renaissance. That's how people have to start doing things. And they are already all around. And if there's something that you haven't done yet, do the Tony Robbins thing. Take one small action today. Before you leave the building, take one small action towards whatever it is you want to do. That's my takeaway to you, is because if everybody in this room does that, we're going to build an incredible amount of momentum in this particular flywheel. And out of here, amazing things are going to spin off. Thank you very much.